Alrighty, I hope everybody's been staying safe. We're gonna keep things moving right along. I've seen some of you guys' responses, and they've been fantastic. And it makes me, rethink the instruments that I've played. So what we're gonna do today is we're gonna review the orchestra string instruments, and then we're gonna move on to my all-time favorites. So stay tuned. All right, violin. Remember, with all string instruments, this is most string instruments, the only ones that would not fall into this category would be the harp, um, the piano, which yes, the piano can be classified as a string instrument. We'll talk about that later though. But those are the main ones. There's a few others, but those are the main string instruments that do not have these three components. The three main components are you've got the head, the neck, and the body. I'm going to say that again. You've got the head, the neck, and the body. Okay? So, once again, violin, doing a quick review. Take a look. Moving on to the next one. We've got what we use to vibrate those strings. Remember, very important. We use this hair. We rub it up against the string, and the hair pulls the string and it vibrates the string, making a sound. Okay, so the bow, remember, this is called a bow. The viola looks very similar to the violin. The biggest difference between the two is the viola is a little bit bigger, and the last string of the viola is different than the violin, and the top string is different than the violin. Okay, the main thing is it has a different bottom string than the violin, but it does share these first three strings. And then on the violin, it has a different high string. The cello. Now, looking at this picture, don't let it fool you. This is much, 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 much bigger. All right, the main big difference between those first two is that down here it has what we call a tailpiece and a tail spike. Remember, this is what you would put on the ground to keep the cello itself, the body, from actually being on the ground. Okay, so you put the tailpiece down and you hold it up and you put it up against your body to be able to play. But outside of that, everything else is pretty much the same. And then double bass, my biggest favorite one. Same thing. This one, if you could see it, it would have a tailpiece at the bottom, which would lift the bass up. The biggest difference with this one is it does not use fine tuners. Remember, the fine tuners were the instruments that you used to slightly adjust the tone and the sound of the strings. So if you need the string to be a little bit higher, you use the fine tuners. If you need to be a little bit lower, you use the fine tuners. Okay, with the double bass, we would actually use the machine pegs. We would actually use these to do that same thing. Whereas with the other three, you would only use these if you're really changing a string. Okay. All right. So those are the four main orchestra instruments. We haven't talked much about harp. We'll get into that next time. But I think you guys have waited long enough for this one because, ladies and gentlemen, da, 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 da. Guitars. My all-time favorite instrument. I love guitars. I've loved guitars for as long as I can remember. And I've always wanted to learn how to play guitar. And I was fortunate enough when I was in high school, I was able to actually pick up a guitar and learn to play it. And it is a wonderful instrument. Okay. Now, we have two different types of guitars. We have what we call the acoustic guitar and the electric guitar. Okay. They basically have the same body shape and pieces, but there are some differences. So let's start with the acoustic. With the acoustic, you have the headstock, you have the neck, and you have the body, okay? You have the bridge, the pick guard, and the sound hole right here, all right? Now, this is what's the main difference between the acoustic and the electric, okay? Is how the sound comes out. With the acoustic, when you strum the strings, the sound of the strings goes into the sound hole, and it builds up. It builds up all of this sound, and it comes back out as this loud, big sound after going through the hole. Okay, so just like in a violin and all of a violin, viola, cello, and double bass, these have tuning machines, but we call these tuners. Okay, and the tuners, we use them just like we use with the double bass. We use these to slightly adjust the sound and change strings. Right here, this is called the nut, where you lay the strings in place, okay? So they don't move all over the place. On here, you've got the neck, and these little lines, we call these frets, okay? What the frets do is it allows a guitar player to know what note to play on the guitar, okay? So the frets help separate the neck to let you know what to play, okay? All right, so that's the acoustic. Now, moving over to the electric guitar, a lot of the things are still the same, okay? You still got your headstock, your tuners, your nut right there, your frets. You've got your pick guard, you've got your bridge. Here's the big, 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 big difference. See, with this is how you make the sound. With the electric guitar, these are what makes the sound. So I'm sorry, let me go back. These are called pickups, okay? Now, the pickups are like little magnets that pick up the vibration of the strings and they put them through a speaker. So right here in the jack, you would put a cord, you would plug it in here, and that plug would go into a speaker. And then whenever you would play the guitar, those basically these magnets would take that sound from the strings and put it all the way through the jack into the speaker. Now, I miss you guys, and I wish I could do this because I would show you the difference in sound between the two. Because when you play an acoustic without any power, you can hear it as loud as day. When you play an electric without any power, it's so whisper quiet you can't hear anything. And you really need a speaker or an amplifier so you can hear the electric guitar. Okay, so right here, same thing. They both have two different functions a little bit, but pretty much you can't go wrong with either or. Now, here are some famous guitar players. I'm gonna say this. There are so many guitar players. It is not fair to limit them to just the people on this page, okay? And let me say this. I might even have you look for your own, but these were some of my favorites, okay? One of my all-time favorites is Jimi Hendrix. He is considered one of the best guitar players to ever live, okay? I have no words. And right here we have Eric Clapton, very good, another ridiculously good guitar player. Jimmy Page, which he's playing a double decker. Now, what does that mean? He's basically got two guitars into one. This one has a normal 6 strings, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then this one has 12 strings. Okay, 6 on this side, 6 on that side. So it gives him a different sound. And then you've got legend BB King. Okay, but there's so many more guitar players. I could limit it to just one. All right. Now, guitars are awesome, but there's another type of electric string instrument that is very popular in music, and this is the instrument that I play. It is my all-time favorite. Bass. I know it says guitars, but this is called a bass guitar. Okay. Very, 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 very similar to a regular electric guitar, but there are some differences. One, a normal regular bass is going to have 4 strings instead of the normal 6. Now you can see bass guitars with 6 strings, but most of them, the regular ones, the normal, the ordinary ones will have 4 strings. Okay, but all of the parts are still the same. You've got your pickups, you got your bridge, and you've got your jack. Everything else is the same. What makes this different is it plays much lower notes than a regular guitar, and instead of playing what we call chords, where you play a lot of strings together, you're playing one string at a time. instead of playing them together. Okay. Now, here's some, once again, so many great bass players, but these are my personal favorites. My all-time favorite right here, James Jamerson. For those of you who remember Motown and all the stuff we talked about then, he was the bassist for Motown, and he has inspired so many people to play bass a certain way today. Okay. Down here, we've got Paul McCartney. He was part of a very famous group called the Beatles, and he was their bass player. We've got Jaco Pastorius, who really, was influential on how the bass can be played in such a different way. Instead of being a background instrument, he really made it an instrument that you pay attention to. And then one of my all-time personal famous favorites, Mr. Louis Johnson. For those of you who love Michael Jackson, he's the one who played Billie Jean. That bum 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 bum. That is Mr. Louis Johnson. Okay. All righty. So your assignment for this week will be: I want you to find a guitar player that you find interesting, and I want you to tell me what guitar player that you like. Okay. Now, here's the thing. I will allow you maybe to pick one of mine, but if I see too many, then I may not allow that to happen. But I want you to tell me something about one guitar player or one bass player that you like and why you like them. Okay? Well, until then, take it easy. And this is Mr. Stokes. Blah, 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 blah. Take care. Talk to you guys soon. Bye-bye.